Hello underachievers! So you've read the title, and today we are talking about trans things. I haven't actually made a trans related video in a long time. I guess I've made like the trans TikTok videos, but I haven't really spoken about trans stuff. I've actually never had an interest in being a trans YouTuber. The thought of being described as a trans man makes me gag a little. Not that there's anything wrong with being trans, I just feel like it's rarely relevant in the conversations where it's brought up, and you know, I'd rather just be described as some guy. I'm just some guy. Today I thought it would be fun to answer some questions that people are too afraid to ask trans people, because I enjoy answering invasive and awkward questions. I don't know why, it is just very fun to me. And also, I love clearing up like misrepresentations people may have about specific groups. So why the hell not? Of course, I just need to preface this video by saying that I do in fact speak for the entire trans community. I speak for the she, hers, I speak for the they, thems. Any they, them say ayo! I speak for the he, hims, I speak for the zers, I speak for the she, theys, the he, theys, I speak for all the theys, I speak for them all. I am just kidding, I don't speak for every trans person, I can only speak for myself, but I will try and, you know, make my answers applicable to every trans person ever. And last warning before I start the video, trigger warning, we will be talking about sex and other things that may make trans people uncomfortable. And speaking of sex, do you remember that little video I did a few years ago where I unboxed a bunch of adult toys from Adam and Eve? Oh my god, my whole head went like, whoa. Yeah, me too. Well, I just want to give another quick shout out to Adam and Eve. If you are interested in some adult toys, you know, the toys for adults only, then head over to adamandeve.com. They have a great amount of adult toys, which I'm sure if you're looking for something, they'll have it. You can actually get 50% off one item and free shipping in the US and Canada if you use my discount code NOAH. And they've always been good to me, and they've always been good to the trans community, especially the trans community online. So, you know, if you're looking for anything and you want to purchase something, then head over to adamandeve.com. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Let's start off with a fun one. Does masturbating make you dysphoric? Now, this is a personal question to me, but I also feel like I need to talk about, like, other trans people. So, does masturbating make you dysphoric? I think it depends entirely on the person, entirely on the situation, entirely what mood you're in, what headspace you're in. Sometimes, yes, it does still make me dysphoric, and back in the day, it made me very dysphoric. It's almost like a curse, because when you start testosterone, you get so in the mood. You get so horny all the time, and, you know, looking back to when I started testosterone, there are many things I wish I didn't post. I went through a big Bill Skarsgård phase, and that was purely, I think, because of the testosterone horniness. But does masturbating make you dysphoric? Obviously, different trans people have different levels of dysphoria. If you have pretty bad bottom dysphoria, then yeah, I'd say that masturbation probably would make you dysphoric. There are all kind of, like, works around, though, like, obviously depending on what, adult content you watch, you may feel slightly different. So if you're watching like a POV, big in front of me, that may help. But really, when it comes to like doing it in a way that will make you as least dysphoric as possible, doing it under the sheets where you can't see your bits is probably a good way to go. But you know, some trans people don't get dysphoric at all when they do that, so it really does just depend. Do you think you would have been transphobic if you were cis? Probably. Most likely, at least for a bit. Like, I went to a naval boarding school where, you know, people weren't gay, and the people that were gay were outed. So nobody actually came out from their own choice. It was not the best environment for an LGBT person, or really for, like, anybody that's a bit different. Obviously, my friends were lovely. My friends weren't homophobic or transphobic, but there were, like, so many people around me that were, and saying transphobic and homophobic things was so normalized that I feel like even though I did know I was trans, those kind of things, I heard them and they just didn't faze me because I was so used to it. I think maybe I would have been, but then also thinking back, like, both of my parents were not homophobic or transphobic. They were definitely both, like, ignorant about, like, trans needs and, like, the details of trans people, but, like, they both had gay friends, they both were aware of trans people. When I came out, it didn't faze either of them. It's an interesting question, because it's one I can't really answer, because, like, would I have all these LGBT trans friends if I wasn't trans. I probably would, but I don't know. I feel like everybody is transphobic until they're not. In the same way that, like, everybody is racist until they, like, unlearn those racist tendencies. So yeah, I probably would have been transphobic, but not, like, violently transphobic, more just, like, ignorant transphobic and, like, I don't understand these people kind of transphobic, which is still transphobic, but not the worst form. What are others supposed to do when we mess up with pronouns? So this is a question I get a lot, and I feel like it's a really easy answer. Just apologize and move on. Like, say you're talking to someone and you're like, oh yeah, she did this. Oh, sorry, he did this and this happened. That's all you have to do. You don't need to be like, oh, sorry, oh my god, goddamn, I'm the worst. I can't believe I did that. It's just I still see you as a girl and it's really hard for me. Like, the best thing that you can do is just apologize and correct yourself and continue with the conversation, because not only is it uncomfortable for you, like, sure, you feel terrible and awkward and uncomfortable that you accidentally misgendered someone, but it's incredibly uncomfortable and incredibly awkward for the trans person that you just misgendered. And, you know, like, the more attention you put on the fact that you misgendered someone, the more uncomfortable a trans person will feel, because it'll be like, oh, everybody is looking at me, everyone knows I'm trans, everyone knows it's really uncomfortable. It's just not a nice situation. So the best thing that you can do is just say, sorry, he, or sorry she, or sorry they, and then continue with your sentence. Kind of like the same way you'd correct yourself if you misgendered a dog. Like, oh, such a cute boy. Actually, it's a girl. Oh, sorry, such a cute girl. It's not difficult, and you do not need to overcompensate with your apology, because I can guarantee you that makes everybody else more uncomfortable. Is it upsetting for a trans guy who hasn't had bottom surgery if a cis gay guy isn't interested because of genitalia? Probably upsetting is, like, a decent word to use. For me, I wouldn't really use the word upsetting. For me, it's kind of just like, ah, that sucks, but we move on. I don't know where this whole idea that, like, trans people will, like, demand cis people to sleep with them came from, because that is, like, not the case with any trans person I've ever met, and believe me, I've met a lot of trans people. Trans people understand that sexuality is not a choice. Trans people absolutely understand that certain preferences aren't a choice, and I've never had somebody be angry or, like, upset about the fact that a cis person won't want to sleep with them. It's more kind of just disappointing, but, like, we live in the body we live in, we live our experience, and it's not uncommon for, you know, certain people to not want to sleep with us. That's fine. The same with, like, anybody. But of course, for a lot of trans people, it would, like, spark a lot of, like, dysphoria, like, oh god, this guy was really attracted to me, and then I told him he was trans, and he was like, not really into doing that. So of course that would make someone uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the day. There is absolutely somebody that will sleep with you. Do not worry about that at all. I was very worried about that. I thought I would be a virgin forever, and that did not happen at all. Do you ever have dreams where you are the gender you were born as? I had to think about this one hard, and I honestly don't think that I do have dreams where I'm a girl. I had a dream where I got top surgery again, and it ended up looking really bad. But do I have dreams where I was a girl? I really don't think so. But, like, dreams are not, like, but dreams are weird. I'm sure a lot of trans people have dreams where they were the gender they were assigned at birth. Does your partner or your friends know your dead name? So, again, every trans person is different. In my life, the people that know my dead name are, of course, the friends that knew me before I came out. Like, my friends would come around my house, and my parents would be using a different name that they knew me by. Friends that I've made since after I've come out, they don't know my dead name. Corey knows my dead name, but that's only because it made me, it just, like, it felt weird him not knowing. And not every trans person is gonna feel like that. But, like, I went by a name for 18 years of my life, and I like showing I like showing people my medical records, because I find them interesting, and he found them interesting. And it's just, like, there are so many things that, like, I would have to avoid showing him if I wanted him to not know my dead name, and that is too much effort and, like, too much stress, so, like, he knows it. But nobody should feel entitled to knowing your dead name. Nobody really needs to know, apart from maybe, like, medical professionals that don't want to get your files mixed up, or, like, stuff like that. But, like, your friends don't need to know, your partner doesn't need to know. It's all about how comfortable you feel with telling them. But just in my experience with Corey, I was like, it's more of a burden that he doesn't know. How do you have sex as a trans person when you're not comfortable with your genitals? So, this is a tricky one. Some advice I would give is that before you do end up having sex with somebody, you need to sit them down and be like, hey, here's what I'm comfortable with, here's where I'm comfortable being touched, here are the words that I'm comfortable being used to refer to my body parts, here are some words that you should please avoid in all cases. Do not use these words. So then at least you don't need to worry about your partner, like, overstepping any boundaries that you haven't set, because you've set those boundaries, and if they overstep them, then, you know, that's their responsibility. Obviously, it's absolutely your responsibility to tell people what you are okay with and what you're not okay with. Otherwise, you know, There's gonna be some issues. Something that helps, maybe not getting entirely naked. I know that I did not take off my binder at all until I had top surgery. No one I did anything with ever saw my boobies. Only my surgeons saw my boobies. So I usually would wear a top or like take the top off and still be wearing a binder. But you know, you can wear as many clothes as it is possible to wear while doing that. Turning the lights off can help because, you know, a lot of the dysphoria comes from like seeing yourself and being like, oh, ooh. Maybe even like blindfolding yourself because there's no chance of seeing anything then. Maybe put on distracting music so your head isn't automatically going to the sounds that are going on. It honestly is like very different to having sex as a cis person while also being like exactly the same. Like everybody's gonna have insecurities. Everybody's gonna have to take things at their own pace, and if your pace is really slow because of your dysphoria, that's absolutely fine. You kind of just need to make sure that the person you're doing it with is respectful of your boundaries and is aware of the things that could trigger you, and just like take it slow, because like that is never a rush. It's okay to, you know, start doing things and getting uncomfortable and then stop. Like, that is entirely okay. That's absolutely fine. Do you ever get jealous over jizz? Because it is a very clear indicator that you aren't cis if you don't have jizz. I guess. Like, I literally... The point I am at, like, right. I know I talk about this a lot, maybe. Maybe I don't. But the point in my life that I am at right now, being trans is so relevant to me, and I know that seems unbelievable because I'm literally making a video talking about trans stuff, but I only ever think about being trans when I am on the internet, and I see all these shitty trans bills being passed, and people being transphobic in my DMs, obviously. But, like, there was a time where 24/7, I was constantly thinking about being trans, and constantly being jealous of cis guys, and constantly worrying about how I was perceived, and constantly worrying about how I was presenting myself to the world, and constantly worrying that people thought I was a girl. Like, these were thoughts that were running through my mind 24/7, and that's absolutely normal for a trans person that is pre-transition, that has not come out, that is not comfortable with their body. I'm at a point now where, obviously I'd love a I would love that and balls. Right, if I could get that right now, and they would be the same as a cis and balls, I would take them right now. But I'm at a point now where I'm like, I like the shape of my body now because of the tea and the working out I've been doing and the body fat redistribution and the muscle I've gained. I'm comfortable with the shape of my body. There are like things that I'm still like not crazy about, but I don't get jealous of jizz anymore. There was a time where I did get jealous that I could never jizz, and there was a time where I did get jealous that I'd never be able to have like a wank, like a cis guy could. And like, those feelings are fine. I just don't feel like that now because, you know, I'm past giving a shit about any of that. But to answer the question, yes, I am sure that a lot of trans guys are jealous of cis guys for being able to jizz. Like, the older I get, the more I just think about how those things don't really matter, but I also understand that, like, it's taken me years and years to get to a point where I can feel like that, so I can't expect pre-T trans guys to feel like that, because Jesus Christ, if I was pre-T, hadn't come out, and was like ridiculously dysphoric, and I saw some guy who had been like 3 years on testosterone, who had no titties, trying to tell me that, oh, you don't need to worry about, like, you don't need to worry about that. It's so silly that you're jealous that you can't jizz, like, just deal with it. Because that's not a good approach. But, realistically, in the end, it doesn't really matter that much, and I hope that people watching this can reach that point in their life where they are comfortable with not experiencing things like that. Do you ever not feel like yourself looking in the mirror after transitioning? The answer to this is yes and no, because it's like, when you first start testosterone, and when you get surgery, looking at yourself in the mirror, you are drastically changing. You are changing, like, every single day. Like, every morning I'd wake up and be like, oh, what's different about me now? And obviously, that's not the usual experience for most people when most people go through puberty. It happens over a long period of time, whereas when you go on testosterone and you're injecting yourself with that every few weeks, you will wake up and look different and feel different and smell different, and, you know, you will look in the mirror and be like, that is me, but also, what the f***? But there's also the part of my brain that was just like, this is how I should look. Like, I know I'm not used to it yet, but this is how I am happy looking. So it's a kind of thing of being like, I don't recognize myself because I looked different last week, but it's also kind of like, I recognize myself more than I ever have. It's a very weird experience, but it is very exciting and very fun, and nobody should transition just because it's exciting and fun. But, you know... If medical transition is something that you do need in your life, then, like, looking forward to changes every day, every week, every month, every year. So exciting. Did you ever think you were just a mask girl? So again, this is a yes and no answer because, like, I was in denial about being trans for a very long time. Like, if I look back to my childhood, there are videos of me telling my mum and my brother that I wanted to be a busted man, that I wanted to be a guy. And then when I grew up a bit and it was socially unacceptable to say those things, I was just in denial, and I was like, oh, I'm just a girl who's incredibly uncomfortable with herself, with her boobs, with being called a girl, with looking like a girl, with being treated like a girl. So in like one sense, like, yeah, I did think I was a masked girl, but that was just because I did not realize that being trans was really a thing that was achievable for me. And then on the other hand, it was just like, my entire life I never felt like a girl. Like, obviously, feeling like a girl is like one thing that isn't incredibly tangible, but like, I always felt like I was not whatever people thought I was. It really is an impossible thing to explain to somebody who is not trans. But I feel like most people watching me are probably a bit gay, so maybe I'll kind of relate it to that. It probably feels similar to like, if you're a lesbian, it probably feels similar to being like, growing up your whole life and being like, oh, I should like guys, but never really feeling like that was a thing that you were. Like, you never really felt like a straight girl. The idea of being with a man and the idea of getting married to a man and having kids with a man was always a bit off in your head. You were always a bit like, like, I know that's what I'm supposed to do, but like, it feels kind of weird thinking about it. That's how I felt about being a girl. Like, I could not picture my future at all, and it's the weirdest thing because now I can picture my future and I know exactly what I want to do, and it wasn't even that, like, I wasn't sure, like, what job I wanted or, like, what I wanted to do with my life. It was literally just, like, I cannot picture myself growing up and being a woman. I can't see myself as a woman. When I look in the mirror, I don't see myself as a woman, and I know everybody else sees me as a girl, but there is just something in my brain that is telling me that, like, when you grow up, you either will be a man or you won't exist. And not in a morbid, like, you're gonna, you know, aliven't. More just in a way that, like, my brain just didn't compute being a girl. I don't know, it's a really interesting conversation, but, like, maybe not one for right now. If you're FTM and have a boyfriend, do you have butt or other whole sex? Again, depends entirely on the person, and it also depends on, like, any type of couple, like, any type of relationship, people have sex differently. Obviously, if you have all the equipment, and it works, there is nothing wrong with using that equipment. It's actually quite enjoyable. But again, if you have that equipment and it works and you don't feel comfortable using it or you have no desire to use it, that's also fine. There are so many different ways that you can have sex. And it really isn't anybody else's business how you're having sex, but this wasn't a question that was personally related to me, so I won't talk about my sex life. Do you ever miss anything of being born a girl? I am asked this question a lot, and I really struggle to answer the question with a yes. The things I miss about being a girl are not things that are related to being a girl. It's more things that I miss about being, like, cis, or, like, just being perceived as cis. Like, I miss not experiencing transphobia. I miss not having to worry about people turning me down, or people rejecting me, or people not liking me, or people judging me or feeling a specific way about me because I'm trans. Like, I miss not having that whole issue. I do miss not having to put testosterone every day because it's like an inconvenience and it feels sticky on my belly. I miss not having to explain to my doctor when I go to appointments that I'm trans and that I'm on this medication and that I had surgery at this point and that this is why I have a different NHS number and, like, all that kind of stuff. Just, like, inconveniences like that. Like, I just don't... There's nothing I miss about, like, being a girl. Because I never really was a girl. And I know I keep saying, like, people say they weren't a girl, but I was a girl. I was a girl in the sense that people perceived me as a girl, and I thought I was a girl because I didn't know that I could transition. But I feel the same way about my identity now that I did when I was 5. So, like, do I miss anything about being a girl? Miss not having big old scars on my titties, but they don't bother me, like, at all. Like, I just don't miss anything, and I'm sure some people do. I've got really bendy elbows. But no, I don't miss anything, really. Last question. Are you taking testosterone because you're so baby-faced? Now, this could be taken in 2 ways. Are you taking testosterone because you're so baby-faced? Like, are you taking testosterone? They think I'm not taking testosterone because I have a baby face. Or it could be, are you taking testosterone because you have a baby face? Like, are you taking testosterone because you have a baby face and you want it to not be baby? I am taking testosterone. I just have a baby face. I'm just young looking. I'm just a twink. That's all I can say. But yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions, drop them down in the comment section. Even if they're invasive or uncomfortable, don't be afraid to ask them. Only on this video, though. Don't comment invasive and weird and uncomfortable questions on videos where I'm not asking for them. But I'm asking for them now, and I won't be mad at you for asking them. This is a safe space. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Have a good day. Don't see you later, losers. Goodbye. Also, stream my music, you know, Noahfinnce, stuff from my brain. Buy my merch if you want, and maybe I will do more shows. But only if you stream my music.